Russia's gravest military crisis isn't unfolding on the battlefield. It's happening inside its own ranks where soldiers are refusing to fight. Putin recognized this collapse early and responded with every instrument of power available. Salaries were multiplied fourfold. Desertion was criminalized with sentences of up to 16 years. Chechen barrier units were positioned behind retreating troops with orders to open fire. Mercenaries were imported from Nepal, Cuba, and across Africa. Each measure showed results temporarily, and each one eventually broke down because financial incentives cannot rebuild a disintegrating army, and fear cannot sustain soldiers who have stopped believing in the mission. When troops begin asking, "What am I actually fighting for?" no policy can answer that question. Putin's attempts to plug the gap instead accelerated the largest wave of military surrender the modern era has recorded. Ukraine transformed this collapse into a strategic tool. I Want to Live, a government-operated initiative offering guaranteed safe surrender through a Telegram chatbot, has facilitated the capture of more than 10,000 Russian soldiers. The detail that reveals the true depth of this crisis: surrender requests aren't arriving exclusively from active front lines. They are being submitted from training facilities inside Russia itself. Soldiers are mapping their escape before they have ever entered combat. The human stories behind these statistics expose dimensions that raw numbers cannot. Richard Akonaran, a Ugandan national recruited as part of Russia's foreign fighter campaign, was deployed to the front with no understanding of the conflict's purpose and ultimately surrendered. A single line from his account encapsulates the entire Foreign Legion disaster. "Someone approached me on the street, mentioned work opportunities in Russia, and then informed me I had joined the military." On average, 2 to 3 foreign nationals surrender every week. More than 700 mercenaries representing 40 countries have been taken prisoner. Marina from Omsk watched her husband leave for the front as a contract soldier. 3 months passed without a single message. When she contacted the Ministry of Defense, the response was that no information was available. She turned to social media searching for answers. Her story is replicated thousands of times across Russia. The families of missing soldiers have become a quiet but powerful source of domestic unrest. In Samara, wives and mothers took to the streets demanding Putin's removal from office. The 30th Brigade experienced a mass desertion of 2,000 soldiers, more than half its total strength, in a single coordinated movement. Court records revealed the cause. Soldiers had been held beyond the expiration of their contracts with no rotation offered. This was not a panicked retreat. It was a structured collective act of refusal. Beneath these visible fractures lies a deeper ethnic divide. Combat deaths are not concentrated in Moscow or St. Petersburg. They are flowing into Buryatia, Tuva, and Dagestan, Russia's poorest and most geographically isolated regions. In prisoner exchanges, ethnic Russians receive priority. Minority soldiers remain at the front longer, absorbing disproportionate casualties. The command structure of the 41st Army has been functionally destroyed. At least 30 documented cases exist of soldiers being executed for refusing orders to advance. The pattern running through every story is identical. Money, punishment, and fear have all proven incapable of replacing the will to fight. No external force can make a soldier willing to die for a cause he has rejected. The deeper reason soldiers are choosing surrender traces back to a catastrophic miscalculation by Putin himself. Under international law, both parties to a conflict conduct periodic prisoner exchanges. Between 2025 and 2026, more than 6,000 soldiers were swapped. Russia did not return them to civilian life. It transferred them directly into penal battalions. At least 237 exchanged soldiers were immediately redeployed to frontline positions. The majority died or disappeared within weeks. 4 were captured a second time. Putin's intention was deterrence. The message was meant to be, surrender will be punished even after you return. The effect was the opposite. When this reached the front, soldiers performed a straightforward calculation. Surrender, get exchanged, return to Russia, and face a penal battalion where death is near certain. So why not surrender? Returning to Russia means likely death. Remaining at the front means likely death. But Ukrainian captivity offers a genuine chance of survival. Putin designed a system meant to discourage surrender. Instead, he made it the most rational available option. Ukrainian intelligence amplified this through "I Want to Live" messaging delivered directly to Russian soldiers. Surrender, remain safe, because what awaits you at home is a punishment battalion. The prisoner profile sharpens the picture further. 40% carry criminal records. 38% come from economically marginalized backgrounds. 83% hold enlisted rank. Men conscripted from Russia's most vulnerable communities, with the least institutional protection. So what exactly did Putin deploy to stop this, and why did every measure fail? It began with money. The contract signing bonus reached 1 million rubles, approximately $11,500. For men from Russia's poorest regions, this represented transformational wealth. Initially, volunteers arrived from Buryat, Tuva, and Dagestan. But as Frontline casualty reports spread through social media, the financial appeal evaporated. An unforeseen consequence emerged alongside it: soldiers who accepted the bonus and simply vanished. The number of men who collected the payment and never reported to their assigned units continues to grow. The Kremlin cannot get the soldiers it is purchasing to physically appear. For desertion itself, the first high-profile conviction was used as a public deterrent message. But when a frontline soldier weighs 16 years in prison against dying the following morning, most choose prison. By 2026, documented desertion cases surpassed 20,000. Each case is evidence that the deterrence framework has collapsed entirely. When legal threats proved insufficient, the Kremlin deployed Chechen Akhmat barrier units, troops positioned behind Russian lines with authorization to fire on soldiers attempting to retreat. The unintended result: for soldiers caught between incoming Ukrainian fire and their own barrier troops, retreat became as lethal as advancing. Fear did not stop desertion, it redirected it. Instead of fleeing toward Russian territory, soldiers began surrendering to Ukraine at an accelerating rate. The final option was foreign recruitment. Nepalese men brought in as construction workers, Cubans who entered on tourist visas, Africans contracted as security consultants, all were pushed to frontline positions. None understood the conflict, none spoke the language, and most abandoned their weapons at the first serious engagement. Their flight sent an unintentional signal to Russian soldiers already wavering. If men recruited from 40 countries across the world are dropping their weapons and running, what justification remains for staying? 4 strategies, 4 failures. Each one worsened the underlying problem, because the problem was never the headcount, it was the absence of will. There is a ceiling to what money, coercion, and deception can manufacture, and Russia passed that ceiling long ago. Beneath every story and failed policy lies a mathematical equation that has become Putin's central nightmare. By Russia's own Security Council's acknowledgement, through Deputy Secretary Medvedev, approximately 27,000 new contracts are signed monthly. But according to German researcher Janis Kluger, this rate is slowing. Daily recruitment has declined from 1,200 to between 800 and 1,000, a 20% drop. Financial incentives are losing effectiveness. The pool of willing volunteers is shrinking. On the loss side, March 2026 alone recorded 35,351 casualties, the war's highest single-month figure, averaging 1,140 losses per day. Zelensky confirmed this number personally. Inflows are smaller than outflows, and the gap grows wider every month. The Kyiv Post's first quarter 2026 calculation makes the deficit concrete. Russia mobilized 80,456 soldiers. During the same period, 85,290 casualties occurred. The net deficit, minus 4,834, equivalent to approximately 4 days of losses. By year's end, this gap is projected to reach 65,000. The casualty equation is also deteriorating qualitatively. According to The Economist's May 2026 analysis, the ratio of killed to wounded has shifted dramatically. Ukrainian drones now target not only soldiers but medical evacuation vehicles. The wounded cannot be extracted and die where they fall. The tooth-to-tail balance has broken down entirely. When combat soldiers are depleted, support personnel are handed weapons. A leaked order from a Russian general confirmed this reality plainly. The cooks are fighting. When cooks fight, kitchens stop functioning. Morale deteriorates. Desertion increases. The cycle feeds itself. And every soldier who surrenders carries intelligence. Unit positions, commander identities, defensive weak points. Ukraine's strike precision is estimated to have improved by 30% over the past 2 years. Each desertion doesn't simply remove one individual from the line, it makes the next Ukrainian strike more accurate and more lethal. This pattern has a historical precedent, and history recorded its outcome. Tsarist Russia, 1917. The collapse unfolded across 5 stages: morale disintegration, mass desertion, fraternization with the enemy, frontline collapse, and revolution, each stage triggering the next in sequence. In Russia in 2026, the first three stages are documented and confirmed. Morale collapse. At Snygorivka, the average life expectancy for a newly mobilized Russian soldier was 12 minutes. Units refused to advance. Surrender applications are now being submitted from training centers. This is no longer simply reluctance to fight. It is the collapse of belief in the war's legitimacy. Mass desertion. A report submitted to the UN Human Rights Council confirmed more than 50,000 desertions, 10% of active fighting personnel, with projections exceeding 70,000 by the end of 2026. Fraternization. 3 soldiers in Kupiansk surrendered by prearranged appointment, coordinated through the Telegram chatbot. Drone operators guided willing captives to Ukrainian positions. This is not combat. It is cooperation, the digital age equivalent of soldiers reaching across the trenches in 1917. The fourth stage, frontline collapse, has not yet materialized, but indicators are strengthening. In April 2026, Russia recorded a net loss of territory for the first time since August 2024, 46 square miles over 4 weeks, an area twice the size of Manhattan. The spring offensive disintegrated, absorbing nearly 100,000 casualties while losing ground rather than gaining it. A comparison places the scale in context. Soviet Afghanistan, 1979 to 1989. Morale collapse and desertion unfolded over 10 years with 15,000 deaths. Ukraine, over 500,000 permanent casualties in 3 years. The scale is 30 times larger. The time frame is 1/3 as long. Afghanistan brought down the Soviet Union. What Ukraine will ultimately do to the Putin government remains unanswered. The shadow of the fifth stage grows more visible with each passing week. Acknowledging the full picture, however, requires honesty about Russia's remaining strengths. A population of 145 million provides an enormous theoretical manpower base. The mobilization apparatus, despite its dysfunction, continues operating. 27,000 new soldiers arrive monthly. Salaries, even against the backdrop of Russian inflation, remain genuinely attractive to families from impoverished regions. 1 million rubles still changes lives in Buryatia or Tuva. And as Frontelligence Insight notes, Russia's desertion tracking mechanisms retain some effectiveness. Soldiers who flee are occasionally caught, returned, and convicted. Ukraine, to be accurate, also faces attrition pressures. Morale erosion in prolonged conflict is not a uniquely Russian problem. Frontelligence has examined both sides honestly. But the structural distinction is this: all of Russia's advantages are inputs: population, mobilization capacity, financial incentives. The outputs, deaths, wounded, desertions, surrenders, now exceed every input channel. This negative balance is not a temporary fluctuation. It is a structural fracture that deepens month by month. Dutch intelligence's April 2026 assessment estimated over 1,200,000 permanent casualties, with more than 500,000 killed. Carnegie senior analyst Michael Kaufman's conclusion: none of the current measures will produce an operational breakthrough. Russian commanders promised full control of the Donbass by autumn. The spring offensive collapsed with 100,000 casualties, and the front line moved backward. The distance between declared objectives and battlefield reality grows with every week. Russia remains standing, but it cannot stop the bleeding. And with every day the bleeding continues, the shadow of 1917 stretches a little further. He offered money. Soldiers took the bonus and disappeared. He imposed criminal sentences. Soldiers calculated that prison outlasted death. He deployed barrier troops. Soldiers stopped retreating toward Russia and began advancing toward Ukrainian lines with their hands raised. He imported foreign fighters. They abandoned their weapons at the first exchange of fire. He punished returned prisoners. The information spread along the front and reframed surrender as the logical conclusion. Every measure bought time, every measure collapsed, because nothing external can manufacture the will to fight. The inflow-outflow balance is negative and worsening. The army is consuming itself faster than it can be rebuilt. Soldiers are filing surrender plans before reaching the front. 3 of the 5 stages of the 1917 collapse sequence are confirmed and documented. The Kremlin has released no official desertion figures. All data comes from court records, intelligence assessments, and leaked military orders. 17 generals have been dismissed without explanation. The silence from Moscow is the most telling indicator of all, an acknowledgement through omission that the true scale of the problem cannot be publicly spoken. The real measure of a war is not the ammunition count, the tank inventory, or the lines on a map. It is whether the soldier holding the rifle believes the fight is worth dying for. That belief is eroding. It erodes a little more every day. The trajectory has been set.